Hello there and welcome back to another video here on Wristwatch Revival. I'm Marshall. Thank you so much for coming along and hanging out with me for a bit today. Remember this watch? This is the Rolex Datejust that I restored here on the channel. And I got a lot of comments about the hands. Why didn't you restore the hands? Why didn't you do something about the hands? And as you can see why people were commenting. They're pretty beat up. Not only are they worn, but also the lume is blackened and completely worn out. And the truth is that at the time, I had never actually done hands before. And I've decided I've done a few now, and yeah, these hands aren't great. So let's fix them. I'm going to go ahead and give it my best shot to restore these hands. Now, as is often the case when you're an amateur, watch repairer like I am, you have to learn by watching. And that means looking up videos on YouTube and seeing how people do this type of stuff to do some watch hand restoration. And we're going to give it a shot here on this Datejust. So first things first, we need to get the movement out of the case. That means, of course, taking the case back off, taking the crown out. And then, at least for this Rolex movement, there's two screws that hold the movement to the case. They actually kind of, interestingly, you tighten them down to loosen them, and then you turn the entire movement. And there's a few divots on the sides that'll allow the movement to come out the back of the watch. So now I can do a little flipperooskies here, just like that. So movement's out of the watch, and now I can put the crown back in just to get the hands aligned, because it's kind of hard to get the hand levers if they're not at least roughly aligned with each other. They don't have to be perfect, but if they're all over the map, it can be difficult. And bink, there goes the hands. And we've got our patients on the operating table here. So let's take a look at these hands and see what we're working with. You can see even at a far away view that they're not looking very good at all, but we can also put them on the microscope to see really what we're looking at. And this is the back of the hour hand. As you can see, it's rusted, but also the lume has really deteriorated. In fact, it's black, and it's kind of that sticky black mess that sometimes happens with lume of this type. And so that will definitely need to be redone. We have no interest. Oh, by the way, that's the hour hand. The other one was the minute hand. But yeah, so this lume is completely gone. As you can see, there's even some corrosion and rust on the hands themselves. And that's going to make our life a bit difficult. Here's the top of the hand. Now, this was polished when it was new, the sides. And then the middle part is kind of textured. But unfortunately, the textured part has discolored, and the top part is no longer polished all the way across. There's quite a bit missing. And in fact, these look like they may be plated, which is going to make polishing kind of interesting. I'm not really sure what to expect as a result, but the way I see it is these hands are toast. And if I restore them and I'm just completely unhappy with how they've come out, I'll just have to source some new ones. And you know what? That's fine, because these ones are pretty crusty anyway, and I'm likely going to be selling this watch on, and I'd like to have something decent looking on it before I do. There's the second hand, a little bit of corrosion, but it looks like it's in much better shape than the other. So the first thing that we need to do here is take the lume off of the hands. Of course, we're going to be re-luming. That's going to be one of the main things we do, but I'm also going to take my shot at refinishing the hands as well. And to do this, I'm going to use a piece of pegwood to stabilize the hand, and I'm just going to scrape the lume off with my tweezers. Oof. As you can see, it's pretty bad too. I mean, this lume is kind of gummy and takes a lot of effort to get going. And I got to say, it feels really good to be taking this lume off of here, as it is really bad. I'm trying to be gentle here. I'm going to use a blower to, apparently blow the other hands off of my block, but also the leftover lume. And I'll use a little bit of Rodico here to try to get any of the residue or the remaining lume off, so I can kind of see what I'm working with, how much more cleaning and scraping I need to do. Few of you have mentioned also in the comments concern about safety when it comes to this type of stuff, and that is a valid concern. There's usually 3 types of lume that you'll find on watch hands. One of them is called radium. That was used up until somewhere during the 50s. It became, I think, illegal to use. It is a dangerous substance that is radioactive and will be that way for thousands of years, so you should be very careful when working on it. What we have here is in the middle, it's called tritium. It's also radioactive, but much less so. It has a half-life of a little over 12 years. So considering that this watch is from the early 60s, this is a fairly benign substance at this point. It doesn't pose immediate danger to me. But that being said, I usually do take precautions. I'll blow away the dirt onto my mat, and then I'll clean the mat after. I'll usually also wear a mask while I'm doing this. That's just more of a caution thing. The last type of lume that you'll find is on newer hands. It's called luminova or superluminova, and it is inert. It does not have any radioactive properties, so you can rest easy with that. It also lasts longer, glows better, and doesn't age in the same way. I think the sweet spot is really tritium, which we have here. This one, not a great example as it aged pretty horribly. But generally speaking, some of the most beautiful hands on vintage watches that you'll see with that beautiful kind of creamy golden color are tritium, as it does tend to age really well. Radium ages much darker. It also tends to kind of eat away at any paint or anything around it, probably because it's radioactive. I don't know. So it gets a little darker. All right, so now what I'm going to do is take a piece of pegwood, and as you can see, I'm trying to actually whittle this down to quite a fine point because this is going to be the carrier for the hands for their initial cleaning. Of course, before I do luming or any type of resurfacing, I want to make sure that these hands are free of any dirt or debris, and I also just want to see what they look like when they've been completely cleaned because, most likely these hands have never been cleaned. So here I'm going to take some pithwood, which I don't actually use for anything else. I've had it for a while because I saw it on some list of things that you need for being a watchmaker, and I haven't actually found a great use for pithwood regularly, but apparently this is one thing you can do with it, is you can shove pegwood into it and use it as kind of like a little stand, and I'll show you in a minute what we're going to do with it. First things first, though, we're going to put the hands on it. So here goes the hour hand, and what I'm going to do is gently but firmly press it into place. And, it'll dig into the wood a little bit so that it theoretically at least should stay still. And now we can put the minute hand on. Okay, now that didn't seem to be sitting well in the pithwood, so I'm going to try putting it in the middle part, and then I'm going to hope that that'll grip onto it a little bit better because there's already a hole in the pithwood. And that does seem a little better at least. It doesn't need to be super perfect anyway, because this is what we're going to do with it. We're going to take this and we're going to dunk it into the ultrasonic cleaner upside down. Now the pithwood will float. And when I turn it on, boom, there you go. Now the hands are submerged in the cleaning solution and in the midst of all of that beautiful ultrasonic goodness, and the pithwood's holding them up. That way they're not just floating around at the bottom of the tank, but they're also fully submerged. And now I can take the pithwood out with the little hands, and look at that. They're on there, and even theoretically, they are clean. And even just at first glance, you can see that they're quite a bit cleaner, especially that middle tract that has the sort of textured part on it. You can see that that has come back to a nice color. So now I'm just going to dry them off. I've rinsed them, but they've got a little bit of rinse on them still. So I just want to make sure that they're good and dry. And just taking a quick look at them, these are much improved, and with some lume, I think they would look pretty good. Now, this is a side project for me, or a project, so I still want to take a shot at actually refinishing the hand surfaces themselves. But that being said, that is a big improvement. If this is all I did and then relumed it, I could at least note that, and once again, once we get this on the microscope, you can see that the that inner tract has really cleaned up nicely, except for around where the loom was. You can see there's still rust or some type of degradation. That's not actually dirt or dust. That's part of the metal that's been degraded a little bit. So here's what I'm going to try to do. I got my Dremel tool. I've got some of the white polish here. I've got a really soft cotton mop. And I'm going to, and I've put the hand kind of into some pithwood, and I'm going to try to give it a light polishing on the top. And unfortunately, it just flew away. So apparently the Dremel's a little too strong to keep the, from the hand from flying away. It kind of sends it flying. So I'm going to try to push it into the pithwood. Pithwood's soft and relatively accommodating. So now I'm going to give it another shot and see what happens. And it's gone again. Yes. Learning something new. It's always fun, isn't it? Here's the funny part. Just the wind from the Dremel tool will actually move around the pithwood. So it keeps jumping away. And yeah, all right. This is not going to work. So I'm going to give up on this pithwood idea and go to the hardcore solution. And the hardcore solution is to take my little staking block here and super glue the hands to it. Now that might sound a bit extreme, but super glue actually comes off quite easily with acetone, like fingernail polish remover. And of course, super glue is going to hold it into place really well so that I can effectively polish it without having to use a ton of downward force, because, hands are really thin. There's not a ton of metal there, and I certainly don't want to overdo it and rip off a bunch of the metal. So here comes the super glue. And we'll let that dry. One more here for the second sand. I'm actually trying to use like the smallest amount of glue that I can. Got a fair bit on the hour hand there, but I kind of figured it out at least a little bit less there for the minutes and seconds hand. I'm actually trying to pull a little bit of this away just so it doesn't pool up around the hand. But again, I can basically dissolve it. Now, in order to do the polishing, I'm going to use one of the regular polishing wheels on my Dremel. But I saw on the video, one of the videos I watched, that the person kind of whittled this down to not have it be this huge flat surface, but more of a pointed surface that you could use a little more delicately. Because again, if you just started mashing on these hands with the sander or with the polisher, it would probably take off too much material. So here we go. Let's see what happens. Again, just trying to be very, very gentle here. It's going to take away a little bit of the material, and then we're also going to get a chance to find out kind of what's underneath, or if these are solid or what's going on. It's always difficult with things like this because really the end result that you want is that it looks good when it's on your wrist, but you're also going to be looking at this under a microscope or here under a macro lens, and it can kind of change the way you see things. And by the way, speaking of, here they are after they've been polished under the microscope. Now, the first thing that jumped out to me was that they had changed colors, at least a little bit. They're now showing that they are brass, in fact, and that was some type of chroming or plating on the top that I have mostly taken away. That being said, they do look a lot better, and this watch is a champagne dial version of this watch, so I don't think it'll be too bad to have that, but we'll take a look after we get them off of this block. So this is acetone, and I'm letting the hand soak with the super glue here, and going to start poking away at it a little bit, and then we'll get the hands off of this block so that we can inspect them. But as you can see that they've kind of gone to their original color a little bit more, which Yeah, I mean, I think I'd prefer for them to just look exactly like how they wanted to look when they showed up. But that being said, I kind of knew that that might be the case here, and I'm not really too worried about it in this case, especially because they look fine. You can see this glue is a little bit reluctant to let go, but once I finally get a little underneath it, and then it lets go. Trying to be really careful to not just bend it up in case one part's still stuck down with glue, because the hand would just probably bend. All right, so that means we need to put it back on its little floating vessel here so that I can clean these again, because, you know, now they've got polishing compound and super glue and acetone and all this stuff on them, and I want to see how they look after I get them out of the cleaner again. But that, of course, means that they need to go back on their special little post that we made. And back into the ultrasonic they go. Okay, let's get them out of here. And once again, our job is to take them off of their post so that we can take a look at them. Okay, so here they are on the microscope. And as you can see, they're not quite as brass looking under the scope as they looked in the other light. But you can tell that we've taken off some of the material. You can see some of the line marks and a little bit left over, but for the most part, these are actually pretty significantly improved. The middle part looks nice too. It's clean again. And that means that I'm going to have to be happy with that for now. I don't feel comfortable doing more polishing or sanding work on them because I know that they're plated now and I don't want to go crazy on brass hands. So now we can start getting the loom together. And now that I've got a little bit of experience with, the loom, one of the things that I've constantly kind of had to fight with in my head is, do I want the loom to be aged or not? Because on some newer watches, I prefer it to just be nice, brand new and white. But as I've said before in my videos, when I choose to do restoration work on the watches with the cases or the hands or the dials or whatever, I'm trying to do it as tastefully as I can. And to me, that's going to be, everybody's taste is going to differ. But for my taste, that means that I want to keep it as authentic to what I started with as possible. I don't want to overdo it. I want to, in fact, err on the side of underdoing it if I have to choose between the two. And in many cases, I won't even do it at all. And as you know, if you've watched the videos on the channel, I use coffee for this to stain the hands. Well, this time, I'm going to try putting it into the mixture itself. Now, the upside to this is that I don't have to go through the extra process of putting coffee on the actual hands after the loom has dried. The downside that I could see, and that I'm going to try to test here, is does adding effectively water, which is what coffee basically is, to the binder, that's the liquid that the powder goes in, will it weaken it? Now, I could see two cases. I could see one where it does, or I could see another one where it just needs to evaporate away and it just takes a little longer to do so. But as you can see, we get a nice pigment here so that I can have the loom match the loom on the rest of the dial and just not stand out as stark white. So I'm trying this out for the first time. I put a pretty small drop in and we're going to give it a shot. So now to set up for looming the hands, we need to put them in a place where they're suspended and ideally where the tips aren't touching anything closely. Basically, we're looking to suspend the loom in between the place on the hands where the loom goes, and we don't want that to get sucked away by anything else touching it. And you can see the color on the loom ended up being, rather than a particularly warm, it's almost a gray, which is interesting because I didn't expect that from the color of the coffee. But also, it happens to match the loom on this particular watch very well. So I'm going to go ahead and just stick with it. But what if I wanted it to be like a golden color? I don't know. Maybe the tea would give me a better result for that. I might try that sometime. But for now, this actually worked out because, again, the loom on this particular watch happens to have dried into a grayer tone rather than that golden hue that you sometimes get. All right, so there it is, loom dried, and yeah, that looks pretty good. That is what I expect to see from a watch of this age. This is very common for the loom to get about this color, and it matches actually the dial really, really well, as it turns out. And again, it's just not offensive, right? It doesn't jump out to you. That's the part that I don't like. So now we can put the hands back on the watch and kind of get an idea for how it looks. I've got this really cool little box that has these two plastic membranes that are suspended inside, so you can put really delicate parts like hands in there, and they don't get tossed around when you move the box around. They're suspended. It's really nice, just a little tiny thing. So first things first, of course, we need to get the calendar switched over to the next day, which would indicate that it is midnight. And as you can see, take a look at the loom on the hands and then compare it to the loom on the hour markers or on the dots, and you can see that actually it came out really close. The loom on the hands or on the hour markers is slightly darker, but really, especially when you see it in real life, you don't even, your brain doesn't go there, which is what I want. So hour hand on first. And I do think that these hands are a great improvement from where we're at before, where, even just at a glance, they appeared very worn. Again, enough for people to write in and say, hey, maybe you should do something about those hands there. And they have certainly taken on a warmer hue. And again, it kind of matches the dial okay, so I'm fine with it. Minute hand going on now. And I'm using some actual tweezers to try to get it lined up perfectly so that I can press it into place. I'll give it a quick test. Should click over right about midnight, and it looks like maybe 5 minutes early. I can live with that. And now we can put the seconds hand on. And there it goes. Just a little push with the hand setting tool to make sure that it's in place properly. And it looks pretty good all told. Now we can put the case back on. And as we wind down the video, I did want to say thank you to everybody on Patreon who's supporting me. That's Brenton, Dustin, James, Mitchell, Drew, Kelsey, Adam, Adrian, Caleb, Max, Russell, Samuel, Stan, and Tony. I really do appreciate it. If you'd like to support what I'm doing here, you can head over to patreon.com/wristwatchrevival. You get some cool extra perks, and it's a great way to support the creators that make the things that you love. All right, so let's get the crown back on here as we finish up the job. All told, yeah, okay, I think the hands look better. I think I learned quite a bit. Once again, I keep pushing my boundaries and trying new things with the looming and the handwork. And every time I do, I think I get a little bit better at it. And that's the name of the game when it comes to something like watchmaking. The type of hobbies that I tend to be attracted to are the ones that have a very high ceiling. They're very deep hobbies, right? The type of thing that you'll never really, it has such an end game that it's not like at one point you wake up and you go, watchmaking? Yeah, I know how to do all that, right? It's just there's too many different facets to it. And that's what I like about it. And there you go. There's your finished product. I think it looks way better. I'm really happy with the way that it came out overall, especially considering how bad the hands were. Bringing anything back to just looking decent again from that state is actually quite good. There was no way for us to fully restore them to like a chrome state with the way that they were manufactured. So the fact that they look pretty darn decent here is a win for me for sure. I'm happy about it. And of course, it wouldn't be a re-illuming shot. Another comment I got quite a bit was, you didn't show us how it looked after in the dark. So I'm going to do that here where I can show you how it looks, because I think it looks really good in the day. So here's the light that I use actually to find parts when I lose them on the ground. And there you go. They glow. As you can see, the rest of the lume on the watch is basically all worn out. But this one works now. So there you go. I'm happy with that. It's glowing. It looks much better. And I'm going to chalk that up as a win. I definitely still have some work to do when it comes to understanding how to fully restore watch hands, particularly ones that aren't plated like this, that I can actually polish a little bit more and get to a shine and kind of fully resurface. And maybe someday I'll do that on the channel with you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate that you take the time to explore this wonderful hobby of watchmaking with me. I really do appreciate it. If you want to find me on Instagram, Instagram is kind of the place where the watch world lives. And I've got my Instagram over there where I post in-between project updates. And as I mentioned before, you can find the Patreon at patreon.com/wristwatchrevival. Thank you again. We'll see you next time.